So bringing up next, let's see. Let's do Euthanon.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of criticisms against the ACP. There's a degree to which I respect your party, but ultimately, I think it's kind of a traitorous organization, traitorous movement. So that's my main argument there.
All right, that's it though, or what else?
No. I mean, obviously, there's the reason for why I think that, but ultimately, I think that you actively try to fight against a state that you're meant to be loyal for, and I believe
The
that
pledge.
someone that ultimately cares about improving America is a genuine reformer, is not someone that wants to destroy. It is someone that wants to build, right? So you actively supporting, or not materially supporting, but
I think,
rhetorically
look, I think
supporting our
that's, with
adversaries.
nuance, I think that's fair, but it doesn't account for people who have balls. What about them?
I mean, I think the people that ultimately, I mean, balls aside, I think that what is principled is to support to support your state,
Yeah,
right?
I
You
mean,
should actively be
I
improving it.
agree, but for example, people like me who like have testicles, it's kind of hard to have your position.
No, I mean, I don't think that I don't. I think that your position is kind of inherently barbaric. I don't think it's about having balls. I think that people with balls can be civilized
The
too.
American
Can you
state is
name, hold
inherently
on, can you name
barbaric.
one state or civilization in the history of mankind that was not the product of barbarism?
Initially, they all were. You're right, but after many years, that kind of state ends up cementing itself, right? Like the United States did
How
250 years
long
ago, right?
had the Chinese state cemented itself before the barbarian Mongols brought it to its heels in a
You're right.
rapid?
You're right. There are cases, but even in that case, what the
There
Mongols did,
aren't
no. But
cases. This
even
is the law of
sure,
history.
sure. But even in that case, when the Mongols, overtook China, that was a terrible thing. That was a horrible thing. So why would you want anything remotely similar to
It's not
that?
about what we want. It's about understanding the laws of history. Barbarism, as you call it, is the foundation of all change, all history.
But just in principle, wanting this change is something that is already
You don't.
morally incorrect.
All right, you can be morally incorrect or morally correct. I don't care. Neither do the laws of history. It will happen. Either submit to it.
Because you're ultimately just like an atheist, right? I mean, you claim to be like a believer of God, but you
What?
ultimately just think that like might makes right, and you don't think in believe in principles, you know.
If you read the Old Testament, I think God agrees with me about this.
Okay, well, I mean, there's an argument to be made that God is also has some degree of evil within him, but regardless, I mean, I think it can be argued that you should be actively trying to improve the institutions. And the reason I'd call you traitorous, by the way, and I think you might agree with me, given this sentiment that you have. I mean, you constantly support these foreign entities. You talk about like, oh, we shouldn't be like focusing on these foreign countries like Israel, like Ukraine, but we should be focusing domestically. But all you talk about is Palestine, Iran, Russia. You don't actually, you barely even talk about the things going on in America. I'll give you this. Like the social work that you guys put in, I do respect that. But apart from that,
Well, our country is occupied by the same people that those countries are fighting against. So, of course, we're rooting for them.
I no, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think that's just insane. You know what I think about that is like that's just very clearly like a traitorous talking point. You know, it's like, oh, we actually have to support the destruction of our own state, and the people over there, right? The Iranians, they're also on the right. Don't you think
So
that sounds kind of
I don't know
insane?
what you're talking about. What are you referring to when you say our state? What is our state? Can you elaborate?
Yeah. Our state is the United States, the a political entity that you seek to undermine.
What is the basis? What is that political entity? Can you describe it? Like, what is it based in? What is that?
I mean, what do you mean? The United States is the is political legal entity that has sovereignty and authority over the territory, right?
What's the basis of that sovereignty?
Well, ultimately, it's the fact that they control the guns, right, and they have the monopoly on violence. But I
So
don't see
just
anything
because
wrong with
some
that.
guy has a monopoly on violence, I have to be loyal to them based on what? Why?
Well, I don't think that's the only reason, but I can talk about that. I mean, if this, the very
All
notion
right,
that
so
you put forward.
let's say I take a gun and I break into your house. Do you have to be loyal to me now?
No, but if you took over my house and you lived there
Why not?
for 300 years and you raised your children in my house, then that would rightfully be your house,
But
wouldn't it?
how has the US government?
We aren't slaves to the government. We are citizens. We actively participate within. We are not subjects.
Okay, yeah, okay, so it's not just someone with guns. You're claiming the people rule in America, right?
Well, look. I recognize that all societies, including the U.S. aren't, completely democratic. They aren't as democratic as they claim.
Can you
There's some
please
varying
get to the
elements,
bottom of this
but
thing I'm
no, no,
supposedly
but you're wait, wait,
betraying?
wait, wait. But you're right. We do actively participate in American kind of civil society. You're right. Yeah, we participate in the culture, in the institutions, in the
Okay.
monetary system. Yeah.
So what am I betraying exactly?
You are betraying the system that built the roads. You're betraying the system that people have faith in. You are
What
betraying.
is the system? What's a system? Is that from cybernetics?
No, no, no. I mean, like the political legal structure, like the legal framework,
What is the
the
basis of that
civilizational
framework?
framework.
What is that? What is it based in? What is it?
Are you not like grasping what I'm saying? It's based
How
on
am
it.
I betraying that by rooting for Russia and Iran and Palestine?
Because it's not just that you're doing, but because the international system is not characterized, as you would say, by class struggle or something. It's characterized by states. It is because it is a game of competition, and in this game, our interests are put against the interests of states like Iran. Right? A state is
Can you give
something.
an example of how the interests of Iran contradict the interests of the American people concretely, not using abstract gibber, just concretely?
Well, they contradict the interests of the American state and by extension the American people. Yes, but the
Okay, so
reason.
is that because this is the only possible state that people in this country could ever possibly have?
Well, what do you mean?
I mean, like, why should we be loyal to the current state? Give me a reason.
Well, there's several reasons, but sure. I
Just
mean,
give me
just
one
broadly.
concretely. Just one.
Okay, okay. Well, I would argue that it is just the most. Let's just argue from utility. Then it is just the most practical thing to keep things peaceful and to develop the country
All right.
effectively.
Okay. I just wrote that down and I internalized it and I adopted it. But the problem is that we're still spiraling into World War III and everything's still collapsing. So can you please tell us
The reason, oh,
what
well,
we're
as a
supposed to
matter of
do?
fact, the reason why the international system is collapsing is because all of these rogue states are
Uh-huh.
trying to undermine
So
our
what are
influence,
we
right?
going? So you're saying we should just nuke the world because we don't like the rogue states? What are you
No, no,
saying?
no, because I take politics seriously. Obviously, that's not what we should do.
So how is the American state going to defend our interests if it can't deal with the fact that there are states it considers rogue which have nuclear weapons? And how is it going to deal with them? Go ahead.
It needs to do what all great powers have tried to do, at least to some extent, which is to use kind of some comprehensive diplomacy, right? Like I'm willing, and I'll give you
How
this,
has
like
that been
I'm
working?
willing to change Taiwan. Like if we can have, like, I'm willing to say, like, we can negotiate, we can have, like, sort of Hong Kong agreement
Euthanon,
over Taiwan,
you
but
sound very young and very naive, and I hate to break it to you, and I don't want your heart to be broken by you finding this out if you were ever to be put in a position of power of any kind whatsoever. But just by having that stance of willing to actually talk to the Chinese and negotiate a solution and possibly give them Taiwan, that is something that would make you, in the eyes of the current state that you claim we have to be loyal to right now, a traitor. They would regard you
not
as
at all.
they would regard you as a foreign agent of China just by having a moderate, realistic position of using diplomacy, and you would be hunted and branded just like Scott Ritter and Douglas McGregor and all these other people. You'd be branded as a traitor. They would stick a bunch of shit on
No,
you,
not at
calling you a
all, not at
foreign
all. Because
agent.
me compromising on one, two, maybe
Yeah,
three
and
geopolitical
that's
issues.
all it
No,
would
no, no,
take.
that no,
Euthanon, that's
because
all it would
I
take.
don't fundamentally want to. I don't
It
fundamentally want to
doesn't it doesn't
undermine
it
the
doesn't
nation. I don't want
matter.
to undermine.
It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter. It doesn't
Euthanon,
matter.
brother, none of the people that our government is targeting and brandishing as traitors, well, the majority of them, they don't want those things either. They just had a moderate position when it came to diplomacy, and that's all it took for them to be branded as traitors. That's all it took. Isn't that sad?
Okay, well, sure, but
You can
even
be
if that's bad,
you can be
okay.
fully loyal to the US empire. You can be fully loyal to the system. You could say I don't want a radical change. I don't want to radically upset things. I just think
Okay.
we should be a little bit realistic and negotiate with the Russians in Ukraine or negotiate with the Chinese with respect to Taiwan. And that's all it takes for you to be regarded as an enemy of the state and a traitor. That is crazy.
Okay, sure. I mean, I don't think that's ideal, and I don't know the degree to which what you're saying is true, but I'll assume it is. Okay, I'll take for granted what you said. Even within that
It
context,
is.
then I would not go full anti-American and full oppose the U.S. in every capacity like you guys do. I would not try to overthrow the state. No, in that case, then I would say, sure, fuck it. Then the American empire is what we're gonna pursue. because even the American empire, to a large extent, benefits the American people. It benefits the American state. And to say
How?
otherwise, by the way, and to say otherwise is to contradict all of the empires, all of the states in history.
All the
The
empires in
British,
history have
during the period
collapsed.
of the British Empire, during the Industrial Revolution, the British people lived in slums and in squalor, while
Yes,
it
and
was the
look where they
biggest
live
empire
now,
in the
and look how
world.
they live now. They live much better, don't they?
As a result of the United States' hegemony, and as a result of the labor governments that gave them social welfare benefits.
No, I mean,
The
what you
Marshall
just
Plan.
pointed out, such a perfect example. I mean, yes, indeed, during the period of industrialization when British imperialism was all over the place, yeah, the British people lived really bad. But as a product of that imperialism, at least to some extent, where they brought resources from abroad and they largely industrialized and they
So,
kept the Germans outside.
Euthanon, do you read books, like fiction books?
Fiction, no, not really.
All right. Do you ever watch fictional movies?
Sure.
Do you ever just kind of like a character and see where they're coming from? Even though they're not even
Yeah.
real in this case, right?
Sure.
Well, I may not be North Korean, I may not be Russian, and I may not be Chinese. But if someone were to tell me that a so-called empire has the right to plunder my country and rape my people and slaughter them just because it benefits their citizens somehow, I would really sympathize with the man who responds to that by saying, why don't they eat a fat nuke? And let's nuke their capital cities and burn them all and slaughter them all. And I'm not even from their countries, and I would still respect that and sympathize with that in my
You
heart of
see the
hearts.
difference. Sure, I can see that point. The difference here is that you're on the beneficiary side. You, as an American, you're benefiting. So the only thing that you're doing, it's actually kind of
You know,
it's actually very much. Wait. I let you go.
It's not.
I mean, it's very much like this cut thing where you want to undermine your own power. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna be one to say that the American empire is so evil that we're killing all these people. Sure, some bad things happen. Don't get me wrong. Some countries are left with little sovereignty. That is true. But
Okay.
we are not this destructive entity. As a matter of fact, if anything, we are a civilizing force around
Oh
the
my
world.
So
God. All right,
I think
enough.
it's
Let
I
Haas
think
talk.
I think it's interesting how we've gotten you to just jump right to fascism after being confronted.
How is
with
that
the-
fascism? How is that fascism?
I don't feel the need to explain why it's fascism. I think
Well,
most
you
people would.
even you agree with me. I mean, you yourself are pro. I
All
guess
right,
you could say
you are
Tellurocrat.
very young and you like to gibber a lot, and I want to have a chance to say something, so I'm muting you right now. You have a lot of energy, I could tell. You'll get burnt out, don't worry. Here's the issue, buddy. It's not even a matter of me deciding to support anyone. The fact of the matter is, if there was ever a U.S. empire, as you say, that official one, like a formally declared one, that decides it can stomp on the rights of other nations for the benefit of its own citizens, I wouldn't need to respect or wish for anything. There will be a thermonuclear war on a planetary scale that will probably wipe out 80% of humanity. And that's just because no one's gonna take that shit. Why would they? How could you even blame them? Even if you did blame them, it wouldn't matter because you're still gonna eat a fat nuke. Moreover,
Yeah.
I find another problem with your reasoning. Besides the fact that the consequences would be a planetary scale thermonuclear war of annihilation. When you draw a distinction with respect to the dignity and humanity of others that are not of your country, and you say this is in our, and this is just assuming it is in our interest, which it's not. If you understand the system of imperialism or super imperialism economically, it actually impoverishes us. It doesn't benefit us. But even if I were to grant you that it did, the issue is if you draw a line in the sand and say, well, they're non-Americans, so we could do whatever we want with them as long as it benefits us, the beneficiaries, the Americans, that hard line that we draw with respect to defining the humanity of others in relation to our humanity gets applied to us too in indirect ways we can't even control. Suddenly that savagery, that barbarism, that tribalism inevitably comes to define how we relate to each other as Americans, because after all, there's divisions among us as Americans too. If we sacrifice our humanity, our fundamental humanity, and become uncivilized savages and beasts, and not barbarians, because our barbarians are actually great, but in this case, animals, having the morals of beasts and animals, what's going to prevent that from spilling over and having us start cannibalizing each other? Why does it suffice that we're Americans on paper? Why don't we look forward and accentuate more divisions, tribal divisions amongst ourselves, to search for where the real humanity is, the real humanity that's worthy of dignity and respect? That's the issue with this cynical false realism, which regards humanism in general as some kind of cucked libtard shit. The problem with that is that it fails to establish clear parameters as far as how the humanity of your tribe can be defined. Those parameters are never clear. The savagery you use against others is the savagery you'll inevitably use against your own people. who won't even be considered your own people anymore. So, by the way, this savage, game theoretic understanding of international relations and this frank attitude of complete irresponsibility with respect to the future of mankind as a whole is exactly why the United States has lost the mandate of heaven on a global scale. It's why the Chinese are stepping in. The Chinese, with their Confucian humanism, their Confucian values, they understand the basics of mutual respect and dignity. And other countries feel that way. It's not just how the Chinese feel about themselves. This is the experience other countries have with respect to them. And this is why the US is losing, and this is why it's producing insane people such as yourself who are now advocating for what? The complete extinction of mankind. And it's sad because, frankly, Euthanon, I know I'm talking a lot, but trust me, you'll walk away from this with a lot to think about. As a powerless person whose opinion means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things, you are allowed to have whatever ideology you want. You're allowed to have whatever belief you want. You're allowed to literally think whatever you want. But instead, you decide to cuck yourself and pretend like you have power, which you don't, by adopting what? The ideology of the current system and pretending like it's a consequence of some moral or ethical conclusion you've arrived at in your own head. No, you're acquiescing conveniently to the shit that's on the table already in front of you. And you're turning that into an ideology? Why? You're doing it for free. You don't even have a slice of the fucking pie that you're demanding we all sacrifice our blood to bake. You don't even have a fucking slice of it. You could literally imagine any kind of fucking pie you want. And the one that you decide to raise to the dignity of an ideology is the one that you'll never even have a fucking slice of. It's pathetic, man. Please rethink it.
Before we move on to another guest, I just want to say at the beginning, and like Haas said, I think you're young with a lot of energy, but if you said that you want something to be built, you want you want reforms. And I would say if you think that's possible, you think, there's any way to reform and improve and build something better without directly challenging this this global empire that Haas is talking about, which uses the U.S. state as a tool. Join a social democratic political campaign, because that's what I did. And when I watched them with my own eyes rig the election against Bernie Sanders for proposing the most moderate reforms imaginable to make sure that he didn't win the nomination. And that's what happens if you try and reform the system. The Democrats come, they co-opt whatever movement you're trying to create, and they destroy it from the inside. The only way to actually build something is communism, is to understand that, as Haas says, politics is war, and we have to directly challenge this global imperialist system that's occupying our country. There's no working together with them. There's no begging them for reforms or to build something new. You have to fight them, and you have to do it ruthlessly and strategically if you want to build anything. And that's what history has shown.
I have a question just before I go, but it was great talking to you. If you want to answer it, obviously, it's quite a particular thing. But I've looked at the ACP website and I've seen the map, and I've seen that the capital, right, the place where ACP radiates from, is like in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. Just out of curiosity, is that where you would build a new capital? Just purely out of curiosity.
Rob, I mean, I can't speak for Eddie, but it's what I want.
Just one recommendation for that. I'd recommend Cairo, Illinois. It's a very central location. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's got to be the barbaric Rockies to me.
Fair. All right. See ya.